Today in the canning kitchen, we'll be making traditional style bread and butter pickles. You will need 4 pounds of pickling cucumbers between 4 and 6 inches long, 2 pounds of onions, 3 cups of 5% acidity on white vinegar, 1/3 of a cup of non-iodized salt, 2 teaspoons of ground turmeric, a teaspoon of ground ginger, 2 tablespoons of mustard seed, 2 teaspoons of celery seed, and a teaspoon of whole peppercorns. First, peel all of your onions and thoroughly wash your cucumbers with cold water. I would recommend peeling all store-bought cucumbers. First, you're going to cut off the blossom end as well as the stem to keep your cucumber from becoming soft or bitter. Then, you cut your cucumber into 1/4-inch round coins. Once your cucumber is cut, place the coins in a thin layer in a large bowl or pot. Next, move on to a layer of onions, cutting them into thin slices. Feel free to use a medallion cutter when cutting your produce to maintain a consistent thickness. I also had to put on swim goggles to prevent my eyes from burning while cutting all these onions. With your cucumbers and onions now in your pot, pour over some of your salt and continue this layering process until you've used all cucumbers, onions, and salt. Once your layering is done, cover everything with ice and set aside for 2 hours. By allowing the cucumbers and onions to sit in the ice water bath, we're helping to maintain a crunchy pickle.
Two hours later.
Now that the cucumbers and onions have been sitting for 2 hours, it's time to start your water bath. Make sure you first put in your jar lifter. Now, this recipe calls for 7 pint jars. As always, I recommend using more than the recipe calls for. I prefer to use a wide mouth jar so it's easier to get the pickles in and out. I like filling each jar with a little bit of water before I lower it so they don't float to the top. Once my water bath is full, I go ahead and lower the jars into the water to start warming. Go ahead and put on your canner lid to keep in all the heat. And now it's time to go ahead and drain your cucumbers and onions. So you want to go ahead and drain them off, rinse them with cold water, and then drain them again. Now our cucumbers and onions have been drained, rinsed, and drained again. It is time to start our pickling brine. We need to start with our 2 cups of sugar, 1, and 2. Next we'll move on to our mustard seed. So we'll need 2 tablespoons of mustard seed, two teaspoons of ground turmeric, two teaspoons of our celery seed, one teaspoon of our ground ginger, a teaspoon of our whole peppercorn. Here we have the rainbow variety. Lastly, we'll have our 3 cups of our 5% acidity white vinegar. Go ahead and turn on your burner to bring this to a boil. Keep stirring your brine to mix together your ingredients and to ensure that it does not burn. Once our brine is boiling, go ahead and add your cucumbers and onions. I put my cucumbers and onions in the pot in batches so I can help stir it down below the level of the brine and help get an even coating on everything. One benefit of adding the cucumbers and onions in by hand is that you will not be pouring in any excess water that did not drain off previously. We're gonna go ahead and keep stirring this mixture until the sugar has dissolved and we've brought everything back to a boil. Around this time, I start taking out a few of my jars from the water bath to start filling with my pickles. Using the funnel and a ladle, I fill each jar without getting anything on the rims. Once full, I first use a debubbler to help any excess air escape the jars. Then, I double check the headspace of my jar to make sure I'm at 1.5 inches. If I'm too low, I fill the jar a little bit more, or if I have too much, I go ahead and dump it back into my pot. Next, I prefer to use the ball pickle crisp to help make extra crispy pickles. It calls for 1/8 of a teaspoon per pint. Now, I lay on my flat lid and finger tighten the ring. You may notice I don't hold the jar with my spare hand. I just keep tightening my jar until it spins on my towel. If I over tighten the jar, the lid will buckle and not produce a seal. Once it's finger tightened, I go ahead and put it back in my canner and repeat the process with all of my jars. Then, cover the water bath and bring it to a boil. As you can tell, I ran out of pickles. Since I'm nowhere close to the correct headspace for processing, these pickles will go into the fridge once they're cooled. Because the flat lids are only good for one use while canning, I go ahead and keep my old flats, and I use them for times like this when they're only good for the fridge. Once my water bath is ready, I double check that the water is boiling and I set my timer for 10 minutes. Always remember to check your elevation before canning because it may change your required processing time. After my 10-minute processing time, I remove the canner lid, turn off the burner, and set the timer for another 5 minutes. After the 5-minute cool down, I carefully remove all of my jars, making sure to keep them upright and place them on a towel to cool for 12 to 24 hours. It is only after this time that it is advised to test the seal for each jar. After 24 hours, I come back and test each jar. First, I remove the rings from each and lightly press on the flat lids to make sure that they are concave. Next, I pick up each jar from just the flat lid to double check that they're completely sealed. You should then wash each jar before you store it. You can go ahead and make a soapy water bath in your kitchen sink to thoroughly clean everything. As far as rings go, it is up to you if you store your jars with or without a ring. I personally do not use a ring. Just in case anything fails, it is much easier to determine which jars are culprit. Your jars are ready to be stored for future use. I always suggest letting them sit for 4 to 6 weeks before the full pickling flavor has developed. Happy canning!